Welcome back to the Classic and Current Gaming Podcast, a weekly podcast where we look at the history and development of video games. I'm your host, RxDude22. This is the first episode for 2024, and it's the second half of Season 2, where we're looking at games being used in the Retro Gaming League. The Retro Gaming League is a friendly, competitive competition on Facebook where pages come together each week and compete against each other in a different retro video game. This week's game comes to us from the Super NES. It was actually a launch title for the system. We're going to look at Pilotwings this week. Let's jump right into it. Pilotwings is an amateur flight simulator video game developed and published by Nintendo for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The game was originally released in Japan in December 1990, shortly after the launch of the Super Famicom in the country. It was also released as a launch title for the Super NES in August 1991 in North America, with a European release following in 1992. In Pilotwings, the player attempts to earn pilot licenses through lessons in light plane flight, hang gliding, skydiving, and the use of a rocket belt. Bonus stages and levels involving an attack helicopter are also available. Each fit offers unique controls and gameplay mechanics. To increase the realism of the game's flight simulation, the developers extensively utilized the SNES's Mode 7 capability, which mimics 3D graphics by rotating and scaling flat objects. The game was well received upon its release, largely thanks to its graphical presentation. The game has since been re-released for the Wii and Wii U Virtual Console and Nintendo Switch Online in PAL regions, North America and Japan, as well as new Nintendo 3DS in North America. A sequel, Pilotwings 64, was released for the Nintendo 64 in 1996. After many years of announcements and cancellations, Nintendo released a second sequel, Pilotwings Resort, in 2011 for the Nintendo 3DS. Gameplay. Pilotwings takes place in a series of training areas called the Flight Club. The player's objective is to pass each training area and earn licenses based on the difficulty of the courses. Each area features events, which may be played in any order. In these events, the player controls one of 4 aerial vehicles and must complete a task, usually flying through a floating marker, within a time limit. Upon completing or failing an objective, the player earns points and receives comments from the instructors. Points are awarded based on criteria such as time taken to complete the event, the accuracy of the landing, and the completion of certain tasks, such as flying through colored rings or orbs. To pass a training area, the combined scores from each event must exceed a certain threshold. Each training area can be replayed if necessary, and passwords allow players to save their progress. The first event, the light plane, requires the players to follow a guide path of orbs, or to fly through rings of orbs, and then land on the runway. In the second event, skydiving, the player jumps from a helicopter at a high altitude and maneuvers by leaning forward and back, and by rotating on a horizontal axis. The player must fall through rings of orbs in the sky before deploying the parachute, and must then attempt to land in a target area made up of concentric circles, which marks indicating the points awarded. The third event sees the player taking control of a rocket belt, which can be controlled with left and right yaw rotation, leaning forward and back to control speed. High and low levels of thrust allow high speed and finer control, respectively. The player must take off and fly through a series of rings, bars, or other objects before landing in a target area. The objective of the fourth event, hang gliding, is to catch thermal currents, represented by ascending white dots, reach a specific altitude, and then land as close as possible to the center of a gray square target. Some events have bonus stages that add to a player's score, even if it has already reached a maximum number. In the skydiving, rocket belt, and hang glider modes, landing on moving platforms rewards players with a perfect score, and a bonus stage for extra points may be earned by falling into the water of a target area. These stages include maneuvering a diving penguin into a pool, bouncing a winged man across a series of trampolines, and flying another winged man as far as possible. After completing the certification courses of all 4 sections, the player is informed that an agent has infiltrated enemy base, Evil Syndicate, on the fictional Izanu Island, and has freed the player's kidnapped instructors, who are waiting to be rescued. player's mission is to fly an attack helicopter from an offshore aircraft carrier and retrieve the captives by landing on a helipad on the island. The rescue mission stands out from the other normal courses in that the player does more than maneuver a craft. As the player flies over the island, they must successfully dodge anti-aircraft fire from ground-based turrets, and although the helicopter is able to fire missiles to destroy the artillery, a single hit to the craft causes the game to end. The helicopter has forward, back, left, and right pitch controls, rotor throttle controls for altitude, and left and right missile firing controls. Completing the mission earns the player the Pilotwings certificate and opens more difficult training areas, consisting of several weather conditions and higher score requirements, and another helicopter mission. Clearing a second helicopter mission awards the player with the golden Pilotwings, and the credits roll. Development. Pilotwings was developed by Nintendo Analysis and Development team consisting of members of the company's research and development divisions under the leadership of producer Shigeru Miyamoto. Nintendo EAD completed Pilotwings in two other games, Super Mario World and F-Zero, within 15 months of the debut of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Pilotwings was released in Japan on December 21st, 1990, 1 month after the system's launch, and was later released in North America in August of 1991 as a launch title. The game's musical score was composed by Soyo Oka, while her superior Koji Kondo was responsible for the sound programming and the helicopter theme. 6 tracks from the game, including a rearranged version of the Skydiving theme, appeared on a Nintendo Super Famicom music album released in Japan on March 4, 1992. 6 piano-arranged versions of songs from the game were included on the Nintendo Super Famicom Game Music Fun Together with Buyer CD, which was released in Japan on November 30th, 1993. A flight simulator game resembling Pilotwings called Dragonfly was shown during the official unveiling of the SNES to the Japanese press on November 21st, 1988. The game was used to demonstrate the system's Mode 7 graphics system, which allows rotation, scaling, and other effects to be used on flat images to create a 3D effect. Because the game does not use co-processor chip Super FX, the true Super NES 3D technology, the buildings, runway, trees, and so on are all painted flat on the ground, and they appear to stick out of the ground when the player's viewpoint is far above. Reception and legacy. Pilotwings was positively received during both its initial release and in retrospective reviews. The game drew praise for its presentation, with publications describing the game's use of Mode 7 graphics as, quote, stunning and jaw-dropping. Pilotwings was generally seen as a showpiece title for the Super NES, demonstrating its Mode 7 features, built-in sprite scaling, and high-end sound chip in a conspicuous manner. Its level of challenge was also positively noted. Mean Machines found that practicing the flight test and reaching the end of the game was very rewarding. Official Nintendo Magazine remarked in 2009, this early SNES title is still enjoyable enough to be considered a true classic. In February 2006, Pilotwings was listed as the 153rd best game on a Nintendo console by Nintendo Power. They also listed it as the 20th best game on the Super NES. IGN listed it in their top 100 games of all time at number 74 in 2003 and at number 91 in 2007. They later placed it as the 80th best Super NES game. It was named the 16th best game on the Super NES by Game Daily in 2008, while Game Informer listed it at number 131 in its top 200 games of all time in 2009. Official Nintendo Magazine ranked the game number 61 on its February 2009 100 Best Nintendo Games list. In April 1996, Super Play listed it as the 10th greatest game for the Super NES. In 2018, Complex rated the game 77th on their Best Super Nintendo Games of all time. In 1995, Total placed the game 20th on their top 100 SNES games. In 1996, Games Master listed Pilotwings 30th in its top 100 games of all time. Pilotwings sold over 2 million copies worldwide by 1996. A sequel, Pilotwings 64, was released for the Nintendo 64 in 1996 as a launch title for its respective system. A second sequel for the Nintendo 64, which showed off the console's capabilities, was cancelled due to the lack of development resources within Nintendo. In 2003, it was announced that Factor 5 was working on a GameCube incarnation of the Pilotwings series. Development was moved to Nintendo's Wii console shortly thereafter. However, an anonymous blogger claimed in late 2009 that Factor 5 had indeed finished working on it, but that Nintendo was not confident in publishing it. Nintendo finally announced a new title in the series, the Nintendo 3DS, titled Pilotwings Resort at E3 2010. The new title was released as a launch title for the 3DS in North America on March 27, 2011. The game has been featured in the Game On historical exhibition organized by the Barbican Centre, including a display at the Science Museum in London in 2007. Nintendo re-released Pilotwings on the Wii Virtual Console service in PAL regions and North America in 2009 and in Japan in 2010, and then on the Wii U Virtual Console in 2013. On September 5th, 2019, the game became available on the Nintendo Switch Online service for the Nintendo Switch. In 2023, Roger Waters made reference to the game in a narrative dream sequence involving a battle of good versus evil in On the Run, the third track of the Dark Side of the Moon Redux. A stage based on Pilotwings makes an appearance in Super Smash Bros. For Wii U and Smash Bros. Ultimate. The stage combines elements from the original Super NES game and Pilotwings Resort. All information here was provided by Wikipedia. And that'll bring an end to episode 22 of the Classic and Current Gaming Podcast, a weekly podcast where we look at history and development of a different video game. Next week, we're going to explore a game from the Nintendo DS, and that's going to be Mario Kart DS, which is the next game to be used in the Retro Gaming League, which is our Season 2 features. You can check out the podcast multiple ways. You can watch the podcast on YouTube every week, or you can listen to it on Spotify or your other favorite listening platform as well. We'll see y'all next week, folks. It's been RX222 from the podcast signing out. Keep on gaming. See you on the next stream. Be good to each other. And you'll hear me on the next podcast next week. Everybody have a great week, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care, everybody.